cold metal slides against my palm, a smooth and heavy latch that releases with a dull, satisfying click. The belt retracts across my lap, a soft ribbon of fabric pulling away to rest against the seat. Around me, the cabin air has shifted. The steady, white noise roar of the engines has dropped to a low, idling hum, barely a vibration in the floorboards, signaling that the long suspension of flight is over. I do not stand immediately. Instead, I lean back against the headrest one last time, letting my eyes trace the curve of the overhead bin, grounding myself in the stillness. The plane is stationary, but my body still holds the memory of motion, a phantom forward momentum that slowly ebbs away into the cushioned seat. A chime sounds, gentle and distinct. It is the cue to move, but I take a moment to stretch my legs, feeling the blood return to my ankles, the stiffness in my knees unlocking. I gather my things with deliberate slowness, a jacket draped over an arm, a book tucked into a bag. The aisle is a shuffle of quiet movement, a collective exhale of travelers finding their footing on solid ground again. I join the line, stepping from the carpeted aisle onto the transitional metal of the threshold. The air in the jet bridge is different. It is cooler, smelling faintly of rain and aviation fuel, a scent that belongs to nowhere and everywhere. The floor here is ribbed rubber, and my shoes make a dull, thumping sound as I begin the long walk toward the terminal. The walls are translucent, offering a hazy, distorted view of the tarmac, where ground crews move in slow, purposeful patterns, guiding giants into their slumber. I emerge from the tunnel into the wide, cavernous space of the arrival hall. This is the beginning of the journey within the journey, a passage through a landscape of glass and polished stone. The floor here is a vast expanse of terrazzo, speckled with flecks of gray and white. It is hard and unyielding, offering a crisp return of energy with every step. Clicky, clacky, clicky, clacky. My shoes find a rhythm on the surface. It is a steady, metronomic beat that echoes faintly against the high ceilings. I adjust the strap of my bag on my shoulder, feeling its weight settle into the muscle, a comforting pressure that reminds me I am carrying everything I need. Behind me, the bag on wheels creates a counter-rhythm. It is a low, rolling hum, a continuous vibration that travels up the handle and into my hand. The corridor stretches out, a long, brightly lit artery pulsing with the slow flow of arrivals. I focus entirely on the act of walking. There is no need to navigate, no need to make decisions. The path is singular. I let my gaze soften, blurring the signs and the faces, narrowing my world to the 10 feet of floor in front of me. The surface changes again. The terrazzo gives way to a section of low-pile carpet designed to dampen sound. The sharp click of my heels vanishes, replaced by a soft, muffled shuffle. The rolling hum of the suitcase deepens, becoming a drag, a resistance that requires a slight lean forward. It feels like walking through shallow water, a slow motion wade that encourages a deeper breath. I inhale the conditioned air, cool and neutral, and exhale the stale atmosphere of the plane. Ahead, the floor turns back to tile, but now I step onto a moving walkway. There is a moment of adjustment, a slight shift in balance as the metal plates slide under my soles. I stand still, letting the machine do the work. My hand rests on the rubber handrail, which moves at a fractionally different speed than the floor, tugging my arm forward in microscopic increments. The sound here is a hypnotic drone. Beneath the metal slats, motors whir in a constant, low-frequency loop. Whirr, whirr, whirr. It is a sound of pure function, steady and reliable. I watch the world slide by. Pillars of concrete wrapped in silver cladding pass one by one. Advertisements for watches and perfumes float past, but I do not read them. They are just shapes and colors, drifting in the periphery. At the end of the walkway, the metal plates disappear under a comb of yellow teeth. I step off, the sudden return to self-propulsion, feeling momentarily strange, as if the ground has stopped moving, but my body has not. The walk continues, down a gentle ramp, gravity assisting my descent. The suitcase rolls faster here, eager to catch up, its wheels spinning freely on the smooth incline. I reach a set of wide, automatic doors. They slide open with a whisper of escaping air, revealing the baggage claim. The room is vast, filled with the circling motion of the carousels. I do not stop here. I continue through the green channel, the nothing to declare lane, a passage of green light and quiet observation. The final set of doors awaits. They part, and the soundscape shifts dramatically. The hushed, controlled acoustics of the secure zone give way to the murmur of the public arrival hall. But even this is subdued. It is late, or perhaps very early, and the crowds are thin. I weave through the waiting families and drivers holding placards, stepping out through the revolving glass door and into the Prague air. It is cool, a distinct, crisp chill that carries the scent of damp earth and river water. The sky above is a deep, bruised purple, hovering somewhere between the end of night and the beginning of morning. I walk to the curb, the pavement rougher here, an aggregate of stone and asphalt that crunches softly underfoot. A car waits. It is a dark sedan, its engine idling with a quiet purr. The driver nods, a silent greeting, and opens the rear door. I slide onto the leather seat, the interior smelling of vanilla and leather. The door closes, sealing me inside a bubble of silence. The heavy thud shuts out the wind, the distant traffic, the chatter of the curb. It is just the soft glow of the dashboard and the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers clearing a light mist that has begun to fall. We pull away. The airport falls behind us, a glowing island of glass receding into the dark. The road is smooth, the tires humming a high-pitched note on the wet tarmac. Streetlights rhythmically wash the cabin in amber light. Flash, dark, flash, dark. I watch the droplets on the window pane. They collect, merge, and streak backward, fighting the wind until they are swept away. The journey into the city is a gradual transition of textures. We leave the wide, modern highways where concrete barriers blur into gray ribbons and enter the narrower, tree-lined avenues of the outskirts. The rhythm of the car changes. We slow down. The hum of the tires drops in pitch. Buildings begin to rise on either side. Not the glass towers of the airport, but heavy, solid structures. I see silhouettes of Baroque rooflines against the purple sky, intricate cornices and chimneys standing guard over the sleeping city. We cross a bridge, not the famous one I seek, but a modern span across the Vltava. The river below is a black mirror, reflecting the city lights in long, shivering columns of gold and white. The tires find cobblestones. This is the sound of Prague, a low, rumbling vibration that resonates through the chassis of the car and into the soles of my feet. Rumble thrum, rumble thrum. It is a soothing, chaotic massage, a texture that speaks of history and stone laid by hand centuries ago. The car sways gently, rocking like a boat in a calm harbor as it navigates the uneven surface. We wind through narrow streets where the buildings lean and close. The amber streetlights cast long shadows that stretch and retreat across the leather seats. The driver turns a corner, the indicator clicking a slow, steady beat tick, tock, tick, tock. And we come to a halt in a small, quiet square. I step out. The air is stiller here, protected by the high walls of the surrounding architecture. The silence of the city is profound. It is not an empty silence, but a resting one, heavy with the presence of stone. I look up. Above the roofline, a single spire pierces the gloom, dark and sharp. The hotel entrance is a heavy oak door, banded with iron. I push it open. It swings inward with a weight that implies centuries of use. Inside, the lobby is warm and dim. A chandelier overhead glows with low wattage bulbs, casting a honey-colored light on the Persian rugs and dark wood paneling. The receptionist speaks in a whisper, a soft exchange of words that barely disturbs the air. A key is placed in my hand. It is real metal, heavy and cool, attached to a brass fob. No plastic cards here. I bypass the elevator and take the stairs. They are wide, covered in a plush runner that swallows my footsteps completely. The banister under my hand is polished smooth, the wood warm to the touch. I climb slowly, counting the steps. 1, 2, 3. The landing turns. 4, 5, 6. The fatigue of the journey begins to catch up with me. A pleasant heaviness in the eyelids, a slowness in the limbs. The corridor on the 3rd floor is narrow and quiet. I find my room number, the brass digits catching the light. The key slides into the lock. The mechanism turns with a heavy, oiled precision clunk, and the door opens. The room is a sanctuary of stillness. Heavy velvet curtains are drawn tight against the window, shutting out the streetlights and the city. The air is cool and smells of clean linen and lavender. I leave my bag by the door. I do not unpack. That is a task for the daylight. I move to the window and part the curtains just an inch. Outside, the mist is swirling around the gas lamps in the square below. A lone figure walks across the cobblestones, their footsteps silent from this height. I let the curtain fall back, sealing the world away. My shoes come off. The relief is instant, a decompression of the feet that sends a wave of relaxation up my legs. I peel off the layers of travel, the jacket, the scarf, draping them over a chair. The room is dimly lit by a single bedside lamp with a cream shade, casting a pool of soft, inviting light onto the pillows. The bed is high, piled with white duvets. I pull back the covers. The sheets are crisp, cool, and taut. I sit on the edge of the mattress, and it yields perfectly, supporting me while inviting me down. I swing my legs up and slide between the layers. The sensation of the clean sheet against my skin is the final destination. It is cool at first, smoothing over the tired muscles of my back and legs, then quickly warming to my body heat. The pillow is soft but substantial, cradling my head as I sink into it. I lie still on my back, staring up at the darkened ceiling. The rumble of the cobblestones is gone. The hum of the plane is gone. There is only the sound of my own breathing, slow and steady. In and out, in and out. The city waits outside, ancient and patient. The bridge waits for the sunrise. But here, in this quiet room, the journey pauses. The weight of the blanket settles over me like a protective hand, holding me in the stillness. I close my eyes, and the last image I see is the river, flowing silently through the dark, carrying the night away toward the dawn. The heavy velvet curtains in the hotel room do not let in a single photon of street light. It is a complete, enveloping blackness that feels less like an absence of light and more like a presence of weight. My internal clock has woken me before the alarm, sensing the deep silence that only exists in the hour before dawn. I lie still for a moment, listening to the hum of the radiator, a faint metallic tick that marks the passage of time in the otherwise silent room. The city outside is still asleep, and the timeline I have set for myself is governed only by the rotation of the earth and the eventual arrival of the sun. I dress in layers, pulling on thick socks and lacing my boots tight, feeling the sturdy leather hold my ankles. The lobby is empty. A single lamp burns on the reception desk, casting a pool of yellow light on the polished wood. But the receptionist is elsewhere. I push the heavy front door open, the brass handle cold against my palm. Prague greets me with a breath of damp, chilled air. The streets of Old Town are narrow canyons of cobblestone and plaster. Without the crowds, the geometry of the city reveals itself. The buildings lean in slightly, their facades painted in muted pastels that appear gray in the pre-dawn gloom. My footsteps echo. It is a crisp, singular sound, heels striking stone, that bounces off the walls and fades into the labyrinth of alleys. I drift toward the river. The navigation is intuitive, a simple surrender to the downward slope of the land. I pass beneath an archway where the smell of old stone and river water mixes, a scent that is ancient and mineral. The street opens up near the Smetana Museum. I do not approach the building itself, but linger near the wrought iron railing at the riverbank. Here, the silence of the streets is replaced by a low, constant vibration. It is the vault of a river. More specifically, it is the Staromsky Jez, the old weir that stretches across the water. In the daylight, this is a visual spectacle of white water and grand architecture. In the dark, it is a soundscape. I lean against the railing. The water is a dark, moving mass, darker than the sky above. The weir creates a break in the smooth surface, a shelf where the river tumbles down. I close my eyes to isolate the frequency. It is not a splash or a trickle. It is a roar, a deep, white noise static that fills the head and pushes out all other thoughts. The sound has layers. There is the bass note, the heavy thud of tons of water hitting the lower level of the river. Above that, a mid-range rushing sound, like wind tearing through a forest. And at the very top, a hiss of spray, a fine mist that rises and settles on the skin. I let the rhythm of the weir sync with my breathing. In, listening to the roar build. Out, feeling the sound wash away. It is a chaotic sound that creates a strange sense of order. It is constant, relentless. I stay here until the cold begins to seep through the layers of my coat, a signal to move. I turn from the railing and follow the path along the embankment, the sound of the weir fading behind me, changing from a roar to a distant murmur. Ahead, the tower of the Charles Bridge rises up, a black silhouette cutting a sharp shape against the lightning indigo of the sky. I pass under the Gothic arch of the tower gate. The stone here is rough, pitted by centuries of weather, absorbing the darkness. I step onto the bridge. This is the valley of the morning. For the next long stretch, there is nothing but the rhythm of walking. The bridge is a spine of stone stretching over the water, and at this hour, it is empty. The cobblestones here are larger, smoother than those in the streets. They are uneven, rounded by the tread of millions of feet over hundreds of years. I focus entirely on the sensation of movement. My left boot strikes a high stone. My right boot finds a flat paver. The rhythm is slow, steady. There is no destination in mind for these few minutes, only the act of crossing. The air out here over the open water is thicker, carrying the moisture of the river. It clings to the wool of my coat and settles in droplets on my eyelashes. Fog hangs low over the Vltava. It is not a solid wall of white, but a drifting, spectral haze that moves in currents of its own. It swirls around the base of the bridge, obscuring the water below so that the stone structure feels unmoored, floating in a gray void. I walk down the center of the bridge. To my left and right, the statues stand on their pedestals. I do not look at them directly. They pass in my peripheral vision as dark, looming shapes. A figure with a raised hand. A group of figures huddled together. A silhouette holding a staff. They are silent sentinels, witnesses to the morning that has not yet arrived. The rhythm continues. Step, breathe. Step, breathe. The sound of my own walking is softer here, dampened by the open space and the moisture in the air. The city on the far bank is a collection of shadows. The castle on the hill is a jagged line against the sky, unlit and imposing. I keep my eyes on the stones in front of me. Gray granite, brown sandstone. The subtle variations in color are beginning to emerge as the sky shifts from black to the deepest shade of blue. There is a meditative quality to this repetition. The mind empties. The list of things to do, the map of the city, the history of the kings and emperors, it all recedes. All that exists is the next step, the sensation of the cold air entering my lungs, the feeling of gravity holding me to the bridge. The fog shifts. A gap opens in the mist, revealing a patch of dark water below, swirling silently around the massive stone piers that support the bridge. Then the mist closes again, sealing the view. I continue forward. The repetition of the statues creates a cadence. Shadow on the left, shadow on the right, an open stretch of railing, another shadow. I do not speed up. I do not slow down. The pace is set by the bridge itself, a measured, reverent tempo. The cold is no longer a discomfort. It is simply a texture of the environment, like the roughness of the stone or the dampness of the fog. It defines the edges of the body, reminding me of where I end and the morning begins. The bridge seems to stretch on forever in this light, a pathway between two sleeping worlds. I am a solitary moving part in a still machine. The quiet is vast. It is not the silence of a room, but the silence of a landscape waiting to breathe. Gradually, the monochrome world begins to gain depth. The blue in the sky softens, diluting with a faint, pearlescent gray. The shapes of the statues become more distinct. I can see the folds of stone robes, the curve of a stone arm, the glint of moisture on a bronze halo. I slow my pace. I am looking for something specific now, but I do not rush to find it. I scan the railing on the north side of the bridge. I pass a statue of a saint holding a book. I pass a bearded figure gazing upward. Then I see it. Between the statues of Saint John of Nepomuc and Saint Anthony of Padua, there is a modest marker. It is not a towering figure of stone, but a small bronze cross with 5 stars set directly into the stone parapet. It marks the spot where, according to the stories, a body was thrown into the river below centuries ago. I stop. The bronze is worn smooth and bright, polished by the touch of countless hands seeking luck or a return to this city. In the low light, the metal glows with a dull, golden warmth, distinct from the cold gray of the surrounding stone. I reach out. My glove comes off, and I place my bare palm against the relief. The metal is intensely cold, shocking the skin for a brief second before my body heat begins to transfer into the bronze. I trace the shape of the 5 stars. They are small, raised bumps in the metal, uneven and tactile. I trace the cross itself. There is a small figure in relief, worn down so much that the features are almost gone, leaving only the suggestion of a human form. I do not think about the history of the saint or the details of the legend. I simply focus on the texture of the metal under my fingertips. It is smooth as glass in the center, rougher at the edges where the patina has not been rubbed away. I press my hand flat against the spot. I feel the solidity of the bridge beneath it. This stone has stood here since the 14th century, holding against floods and wars and the weight of crowds. Now it holds just me. I lift my hand and pull my glove back on. The sensation of the cold bronze lingers on my skin, a phantom pressure. I turn my gaze eastward, back the way I came, toward the Old Town Tower. The sky is transforming. The deep indigo has fractured, allowing streaks of violet and pale orange to bleed into the horizon. The silhouette of the tower is no longer a flat cutout. I can see the texture of the slate roof and the dark windows. Below, the Vltava is waking up. The fog is beginning to lift, tearing into wisps that cling to the surface of the water before evaporating. The river is no longer black. It is the color of pewter, reflecting the brightening sky. I walk to the edge of the bridge and look down at the water, flowing through the arches. The current is strong here. I can see the swirls and eddies, the water folding over itself in a ceaseless, fluid motion. It moves with purpose, heading north, carrying the memory of the snow from the mountains. The street lamps on the bridge flicker. Then all at once, they extinguish. The sudden absence of the artificial yellow light shifts the color palette of the world instantly. Everything becomes cooler, washed in the clean, honest light of the pre-dawn. The stone of the bridge turns a pale, dusty beige. The statues reveal their age, the streaks of weathering, the patches of moss in the deep crevices of their drapery. I resume my walk, moving toward the lesser town side of the river. The valley of the bridge is behind me, and the destination is drawing near. The rhythm of my walking changes. It is lighter now, less hypnotic, more aware of the surroundings. A single gull cries out overhead, a sharp, piercing note that breaks the quiet. I look up to see it wheeling in the air, its white wings catching the very first direct ray of sun that has crested the horizon behind me. I do not turn around to look at the sun. I watch its effect on the world in front of me. The rooftops of the lesser town, dominated by the great dome of St. Nicholas, begin to glow. The terracotta tiles shift from a dull rust color to a vibrant, burning orange. The gold on the church spires ignites, flashing with a brilliance that seems impossible after the long gray morning. I reach the end of the bridge. The two towers that guard the western bank loom above, framing the street that leads up to the castle. I pause here, at the threshold between the river and the land. The air has changed again. The damp heaviness is lifting, replaced by a crisper, drier chill. The smell of the river is behind me. And now, I smell the scent of baking bread drifting from a shop somewhere in the waking streets ahead. I lean against the stone wall of the bridge's end, looking back one last time at the span I have just crossed. The bridge is empty no longer. Far back, near the Old Town Tower, I see a single figure stepping onto the stones, then another. The solitude is ending. But for the last hour, it belonged to the silence. I let my gaze drift down to the water one last time. The river continues its journey, indifferent to the city rising around it. The light hits the surface, turning the gray water into a sheet of hammered copper. I watch a single piece of driftwood catch the current, spinning slowly as it passes under the arch, moving toward the weir, toward the sound, toward the sea. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sharp morning air, and let it out slowly, watching the white vapor of my breath dissolve into the light. The air over the Vltava River is heavy this morning, holding the night's chill within a thick, gray velvet mist. It is the hour before the city truly wakes, a suspended moment where the street lamps have flickered off. But the sun has not yet crested the tiled roofs to the east. standing at the entrance of the Charles Bridge, the silence is not empty. It is dense, filled with the hushed rush of water against the stone pilings below. My boots press against the cobblestones. This bridge, usually a river of people, is now a river of stone, open and wide. On either side, the statues of saints loom in the fog, their sandstone faces darkened by centuries of rain and soot. They stand as silent sentinels, watching the slow drift of the water. I move past them, my pace unhurried. The dampness in the air settles on my coat, a cool, microscopic weight that smells of river moss and ancient mortar. Ahead, the tower of the lesser town acts as a gateway. Passing beneath the blackened arch, the acoustics change instantly. The open expanse of the river falls away, replaced by the enclosed intimacy of Mostakos Street. Here, the buildings lean in, their pastel facades muted in the pre-dawn light. The sounds of the city are magnified in this canyon of masonry, the distant clatter of a delivery tram, the echo of my own heels striking the pavement. To my right, the architecture shifts from the grand to the specific. I slow my pace, scanning the house numbers until the brass plate reads 17. The building is quiet, its windows dark. The entrance is guarded by heavy wooden doors, weathered and formidable. But it is the hardware that draws the eye. Integrated into the wood is a fixture of darkened bronze. It is not a standard lever or a simple knob. It is a sculpture of a letter, an envelope cast in metal. The fold of the triangular flap is crisp, permanently sealed. Below the flap, where the paper would rest, the bronze curves outward to form the grip. I reach out. The metal is cold, smooth against my fingertips, stealing the warmth from my skin. It is a functional whimsy, a handle disguised as a message that can never be opened, waiting for a hand to turn it. I trace the edge of the seal, feeling the solidity of the casting, before letting my hand fall back to my side. The door remains closed, the message within the metal kept secret. Leaving the envelope behind, the street begins to slope. A subtle turn takes me away from the main thoroughfare and down toward the water's edge. The grandeur of the street gives way to the leafy quiet of Campa Island. It is an island separated from the rest of the quarter by the Chertovka, the Devil's Stream, a narrow canal that carved its way through the city centuries ago. The descent is gentle. The sound of the main river returns, but softer now, filtered through the branches of chestnut and plane trees. This is not camp, the square that feels more like a village green than a city plaza. The ground is packed earth and stone, uneven and honest. High on a wall near the corner, far above the height of a person, a small metal plaque catches the faint, ambient light. It marks the level of the flood from the year 2002. I tilt my head back. The marker is impossibly high. a silent testament to the volume of water that once filled this basin. It requires a shift in perspective to imagine the heavy, brown current swirling at that elevation, burying the windows and doors below it. There is no noise attached to the memory now, only the stillness of the morning and the dry stone wall. The line is a scar, healed over but visible, a reminder of the river's dormant power. Turning from the wall, the park opens up. This is the beginning of the long, quiet drift, a space where the city dissolves into a rhythm of nature and path. The gravel here is fine, a pale gray ribbon that crunches softly underfoot. I let my shoulders drop, releasing the tension of the bridge crossing. The path follows the contour of the Vltava, separated from the water by a low, stone retaining wall topped with iron railings. The river is close enough to hear the individual laps of water against the stone, a rhythmic, wet slapping sound that creates a tempo for walking. One step, then another. The motion becomes automatic. To my left, the grassy expanse of the park is a deep, shadowed green, heavy with dew. The trees here are old, their trunks thick and gnarled, roots lifting the earth in gentle mounds. Their branches form a canopy that filters the brightening sky, turning the gray light into a soft, diffused silver. There are no other footsteps here. The benches, painted a dark green, sit empty, facing the water like an audience waiting for a play that moves too slowly to be seen. I continue along the riverside. The air is cooler here, directly above the water. It carries the scent of wet leaves and the mineral tang of deep water. A duck drifts by in the current, its head tucked into its wing, moving at the exact speed of the river, surrendering to the flow. I match my pace to that drift. There is no need to rush. The path curves gently, revealing new sections of the riverbank in slow increments. The rhythm of walking takes over. Heel toe, heel toe. The crunch of the gravel is consistent, a white noise that clears the mind. I focus on the texture of the ground, the way the small stones shift and settle with each impact. It is a hypnotic repetition. The world narrows down to the 10 feet of path ahead of me. A light breeze stirs the lower branches of a willow tree, its leaves trailing in the water like fingertips. The friction creates a soft hissing sound, a whisper that rises and falls with the wind. I watch the leaves disturb the surface tension, creating tiny, expanding ripples that are quickly swallowed by the current. The light is changing now, very slowly. The gray mist is thinning, revealing a pale, milky blue in the upper atmosphere. The water reflects this shift, the dark slate surface lightening to a polished steel. I pause for a moment, resting my hands on the cold iron railing. The metal is damp. Below, the water swirls around the base of a stone pillar, creating a small vortex that spins endlessly. It is a mesmerizing cycle, water flowing in, spinning, and flowing out. I resume the walk. The path straightens. The trees on the left stand in neat rows now, their bark rough and deeply fissured. Moss grows on the north side of the trunks, a vivid velvet green against the dark wood. The visual pattern of the trees, trunk, space, creates a visual metronome. I pass one, then the next. The repetition is soothing. There is no new information here, no signs to read, no traffic to negotiate, just the vertical lines of the trees and the horizontal line of the path. The sound of the city is a distant hum, a backdrop that only emphasizes the quiet of the park. Somewhere a church bell tolls, the sound muffled and distant, marking the quarter hour. It does not demand attention. It merely marks the passage of time in this bubble of stillness. I walk until the gravel changes tone, becoming slightly coarser. The path widens. The rhythm of my breathing has synchronized with my steps. In for 3 paces, out for 3 paces. The air feels cleaner here, scrubbed by the mist and the vegetation. It fills the lungs with a cool, grounding energy. I watch the interplay of light on the water. The way the surface is never truly flat, but a landscape of shifting planes and curves. The stillness is profound. It is not the silence of a void, but the silence of rest. The park is resting. The river is resting in its bed. I am resting in motion. The sensory input is low, manageable, a wash of grays and greens, and the constant, steady sound of the flow. Gradually, the path begins to curve back toward the built environment. The trees thin out. The stone wall creates a sharper line. The spell of the valley lingers, a slowness in the limbs, a quietness in the mind, as the architecture of the city begins to reassert itself. Leaving the open parkland, the route leads north, hugging the edge of the canal. The buildings crowd in again, taller now, blocking out the growing light. The air grows still, trapped between the masonry. I am approaching a peculiar intersection of geology and architecture, a place where the city refused to yield to the narrowness of the land. Ahead lies the entrance to the Vinarna Churtovka passage. It is less a street and more a fissure in the stone, a corridor so narrow that 2 people cannot pass each other without touching. The walls rise vertically, creating a deep, rectangular slice of sky far above. At the entrance, a traffic light is mounted to the stone. It is a standard pedestrian signal, but its purpose here is unique. It does not control the flow of cars, but of people. The light glows red. Someone is coming from the other side, or perhaps the timer is simply holding the space. I wait. The red light reflects off the damp cobblestones, a crimson pool in the gray morning. I press the button. The mechanical click is sharp, I wait. The anticipation is small, a pause in the journey. Then the light shifts to green, a signal of permission. I step into the passage. The walls seem to inhale. The space is tight, pressing in on the shoulders. The stone is rough, ancient blocks of marlstone and brick that exhale a scent of cellar dust and history. I can touch both walls simultaneously without fully extending my arms. It feels like walking through the secret veins of the city. The ground is stepped, leading downward toward the water's edge. My footsteps echo sharply here, bouncing rapidly between the confining surfaces. Click, click, click. The sound is immediate and close. The light from the street entrance fades behind me, and for a moment, I am held in the twilight of the passage. It is a protective, enclosing feeling, like being inside a thick coat. The air is still, shielded from the breeze off the river. I navigate the steps carefully. They are worn in the center, dipped by the passage of millions of feet over the decades. The descent is short but distinct. As I near the end of the tunnel, the light changes again. The claustrophobic gray brightens to a luminous white. Emerging from the narrow alley is like taking a deep breath. The space explodes outward. I step onto the patio area near the Kafka Museum, right at the river's edge. The confinement of the stone corridor is instantly replaced by the vast, open expanse of the Vltava. The view here is low and wide. The water is almost at eye level, lapping against the stone embankment. Across the rippling surface, the Charles Bridge stretches out, seen now from the side. A long spine of arches connecting the two halves of the city. The swans have begun to gather. They drift near the bank, great white shapes floating with effortless buoyancy. Their feathers are bright against the dark water, pristine and dry. I find a place to settle. A low stone ledge warmed slightly by the rising sun. The mist has lifted from the water, retreating to the tops of the spires in the old town. The colors of the morning are no longer gray, but a soft, buttery gold that catches on the windows of the distant buildings. The city is waking up. The hum of traffic on the distant bridges grows slightly louder. A steady drone that underlines the morning. But here by the water, the peace holds. I watch a single swan tuck its beak into its chest, drifting in a slow circle. The river moves on, a constant, heavy presence that carries the history of the city north toward the sea. I do not move to leave. I let the scene wash over me. The golden light, the cool air, the gentle sound of the water. The urgency of the walk has faded, replaced by a stillness that feels like weightlessness. The day has officially begun, but for now, I remain in the quiet interlude, watching the fog dissolve into the blue. The morning light in Hradzhany does not break, it seeps. It is a slow, gray infusion that rises from the river valley below, turning the dark silhouettes of the castle district into solid forms of ochre and cream. I am standing at the top of the hill, where the city feels less like a capital and more like a collection of quiet, stone rooms without ceilings. The air here holds a damp weight, pressing softly against wool coats and the cold surfaces of the street lamps. There's no wind this high up, only a stillness that amplifies the sound of my own breathing. A narrow lane opens to my left, leading away from the grand palaces and toward the district known as Novi Esvet. The name implies a new world, but the stones under my boots are worn smooth by centuries of friction. This is a village hidden inside the city, a cluster of small dwellings huddled against the old fortifications. The grandiose scale of the castle fades behind me, replaced by an intimacy that feels almost secretive. The path descends slightly. The cobblestones here are smaller than on the main boulevards, fitted together in tight, fan-like patterns that glisten with the morning dew. I keep my eyes on the rooflines. I am looking for a specific shape, a disruption in the seamless row of walls that line the street. Most of the houses here are flush with the pavement, their plaster faces rising straight up to meet red clay tiles. But I am searching for the one that retreats. The street curves gently, guiding me past windows framed in sandstone. Some are dark, reflecting the gray sky. Others show the faint, warm glow of a kitchen lamp turned on against the dawn. There it is. The rhythm of the street breaks. A small, pale house sits back from the cobblestone line, creating a shallow recess in the alley. It is not grand, but its silhouette is distinct. The facade does not end in a simple triangle or a flat line. Instead, it steps upward toward the sky. The gable rises in jagged, deliberate blocks, like a staircase built for giants or spirits to climb toward the clouds. I linger here. The plaster is thick and uneven, showing the hand of the mason who smoothed it generations ago. A single wooden door, painted a deep forest green, sits in the center of the recessed wall. Above it, a small window watches the empty street. The setback creates a pocket of silence within the already quiet lane. I step into the small gap between the street line and the house's wall. The acoustics change instantly. The faint hum of the waking city below is cut off, replaced by the immediate stillness of stone and mortar. My gloved hand brushes the wall. The cold radiates through the fabric. It is a grounding sensation, anchoring me to this specific coordinate in the sprawling city. I do not need to know who lived here or why they built their home this way. It is enough to see the way the stepped gable cuts a geometric pattern against the low, drifting clouds, a hard edge against the softness of the morning mist. Turning away from the stepped house, I let the street guide me deeper into the district. The lane narrows to twisting between garden walls and the backs of larger estates. The transition is gradual. The tight, huddled feeling of Novi Esvet begins to open up as the road climbs again, leading toward the broader squares of the upper hill. This is the beginning of the long walk. There are no landmarks here to demand attention, only the steady, rhythmic progression of the path. I settle into the motion. The ground beneath my boots changes from the intricate fan patterns of the village to larger, rectangular slabs of granite. They are old, settled deep into the earth, their edges softened by time. One step, the heel strikes the stone with a dull, muted thud. The weight of the body rolls forward to the ball of the foot. The toe pushes off. Another step. The sound is identical. A low, rhythmic percussion that marks the passage of time. The wall to my right is high and continuous. It is a barrier of rough-hewn blocks, stained with patches of green moss and gray lichen. I follow its length. There are no windows in this wall, no doors, no breaks to reveal what lies behind. It is simply a guide, a solid presence that defines the edge of the world for this moment. I focus entirely on the sensation of movement. The air is cool against my cheeks, a stark contrast to the warmth trapped beneath my scarf. With every inhalation, the cold enters sharp and clean. With every exhalation, a small cloud of white vapor forms and vanishes, dissolving into the gray morning. The incline is gentle but persistent. My legs fall into a cadence that requires no thought. Left foot, right foot. The swing of arms is minimal, hands tucked deep into pockets for warmth. The visual field is simple. The gray of the path, the brown and green of the wall, the pale wash of the sky. A street lamp passes on the left. It is unlit, a skeletal shape of black iron against the clouds. I do not look up at it. I only note its passing in my peripheral vision. 10 paces later, the wall continues. 20 paces. 50. The repetition is soothing. It washes away the need to plan, the need to anticipate. There is only this stretch of road. The sound of footsteps is the only music. Occasionally, the call of a crow echoes from a tree, hidden somewhere behind the wall. A singular, rasping note that emphasizes the silence rather than breaking it. I count the cracks in the pavement without using numbers. I simply observe them. A fissure running diagonally across a slab. A starburst fracture where a heavy load once rested. A smooth, worn depression where water pools after rain. These small details flow past, a moving texture of gray and brown. The grade of the hill levels out for a moment. The effort in my legs decreases, the stride lengthening slightly. The breath comes slower. The rhythm of the walk syncs with the rhythm of the heart. A slow, steady pulsing that feels loud in the quiet air. To the left, a row of trees stands sentinel. Their branches are bare, intricate webs of dark wood tracing patterns against the sky. They do not sway, for the air is still. They simply wait. I pass the first tree. The bark is rough, deeply furrowed. I pass the second. The spacing is even measured. The third tree. The wall on the right curves gently, following the topography of the hill. I follow the curve. The motion is fluid, a continuous arc of movement. There is no destination in my mind, only the process of arriving. The concept of time stretches, becoming elastic. 5 minutes could have passed, or 20. It does not matter. The walk is a closed loop of sensation. The pressure of the sole against stone, the brush of coat lining against the neck, the visual stream of the wall. A light mist begins to drift across the path, softening the edges of the world even further. The end of the road is obscured, hidden behind a veil of gray. I walk into the mist. It feels like walking into a cloud, a damp, cool embrace that muffles the sound of my footsteps. The world shrinks to a radius of a few meters. The wall is still there, my constant companion. But the trees on the left are now just ghostly outlines. Step, breath, step, breath. The monotony is heavy and pleasant. It is a mental quietness, a clearing of the slate. There are no thoughts of the past day, no plans for the evening. There is only the texture of the granite and the cool air. The mind rests in the motion, carried along by the momentum of the body. Slowly, the mist begins to thin. The gray veil lifts, revealing the path ahead. The wall on the right comes to an end, turning sharply inward. The road widens. The texture underfoot changes again, returning to the smaller, tighter cobblestones. The long walk subsides. The rhythm of the march slows, decelerating as the surroundings expand. I lift my head. The visual field opens up, flooding with space and architecture. I have arrived at Lortenskay Namesty. The square is vast and sloping, tilting downward toward the city, but my attention is drawn upward to the facade that dominates the eastern side. The Lorito. It is a structure of pale cream and white, a contrast to the gray morning. The architecture is fluid, full of curves and movement, even in its stillness. Statues poise on the roofline, dark figures against the brightening sky, watching the empty square. I move toward the center of the plaza and stop. The silence here is different. It is an expectant silence, a waiting silence. The air is filled with the presence of the tower, rising from the center of the complex. It is crowned with a bulbous green dome, weathered by centuries of rain and sun. Beneath the dome, open arches reveal the dark shapes of the bells. There are 27 of them, hanging motionless in the cold air. I check the position of the sun, or rather, the brightness of the clouds. The hour is approaching. I shift my weight, settling into a standing posture that I can hold without effort. The cold from the stones seeps through the soles of my boots, but it is not unpleasant. It is merely a reminder of the season. People are scarce. A lone figure walks a dog near the far end of the square, their movements silent at this distance. A delivery van idles briefly at a corner and then departs, leaving the space to the stones and the sky. I fix my eyes on the tower. The clock face is visible, the gold hands inching forward. The minute hand aligns with the 12. For a second, nothing happens. The world holds its breath. Then a mechanical whir drifting down from the tower breaks the stillness. It is the sound of gears engaging, of levers lifting, a metallic inhalation before the speech. The first note strikes. It is not a booming toll, but a high, clear chime. It is followed immediately by another, and then another. The sound is delicate, almost fragile against the vastness of the square. The 27 bells are not swinging, they are stationary, struck by hammers that dance according to a pinned barrel rotating deep within the mechanism. The melody takes shape. It is the Marian song, "A thousand times we greet thee." The tune is slow, measured. The notes tumble over one another, slightly discordant in that specific way that only ancient instruments possess. Some bells ring true and sharp. Others have a mellow, hollow decay that lingers in the air. I close my eyes to listen better. The sound creates a physical sensation, a gentle vibration that seems to ripple through the mist. The melody is simple, repetitive, a lullaby played for the city. It echoes off the facade of the palace across the square, returning a fraction of a second later as a soft reverberation. There is a charming imperfection to the performance. The mechanism is old, built in the 17th century, and the timing is not digital precise. A note lands a millisecond late. Another rings slightly softer. It gives the music a human quality, as if a ghost were sitting at a keyboard in the tower, playing with cold, stiff fingers. The melody continues, weaving a net of sound over the cobblestones. It feels intimate, a private concert for the few souls standing in the square. The higher notes sparkle like ice. The lower notes provide a warm, bronze foundation. I imagine the hammers rising and falling inside the tower. I imagine the vibration traveling through the metal of the bells, out through the arches, and down into the square. The music fills the space between the buildings, displacing the silence, pushing back the gray weight of the morning. It is a slow tune, unhurried. It does not demand excitement. It asks only for presence. I let the sound wash over me, layering over the memory of the rhythmic walk, layering over the visual of the stepped gable. It is the sound of Rajani, waking up. Then the final phrase begins. The notes descend, slowing down. The last chime is struck. It is a middle note, neither high nor low. It hangs in the air, a singular tone that refuses to fade immediately. It drifts, growing fainter, thinner, until it is indistinguishable from the ambient hum of the distant city. The mechanical whir triggers again, the gears disengaging, the levers coming to rest. A final metallic click signifies the end. Silence rushes back into the square to fill the void, but it feels softer now, textured by the memory of the bells. The gray light of the morning seems a little brighter, the outlines of the statues a little sharper. I stand for a moment longer, holding onto the resonance, unwilling to break the spell with movement. The mist swirls gently around the base of the street lamps, and the day begins to settle around me.